So think of the situation. You try to minimize the pollution, and you try to improve the economical situation or price situation, I mean the cost effectiveness. So in that case, what the parameters, governing parameter, that can control or that can maintain the trade-off between these two fundamental elements? I think I'm clear. If you are not clear, then...
Yes, sir, you are asking for what factors we should consider to, so that the prices aren't increased too much, at the same time the pollution is kept in check. I think promoting industrialization can help in a way, making the market more competition friendly. That will make sure that the prices of the products aren't increased too much, and at the same time, if the pollution emissions are monitored by the government, so they will also be kept in check.
Okay, in that case, it is going controversial scenario, because you have shown while you are going for industrialization, pollution will be, not up to the standard or not up to the mark. It can increase. Then you are, demanding.
Yes,
so
unfortunately, it is a tricky situation. It is hard to balance industrialization because we are looking for industrialization and we want economic growth, but at the same time, we do want sustainability so that in the next century, after 100 years, we still have resources so that the world can still move on. And yes, I know that the solution isn't a perfect one, but it is the one that we came up with the current.
Okay, thank you from my side.
Okay, thank you. We have no question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Chuet Aggregates, for their excellent presentation. Now it's turn for IoT Crusaders. Please, I will call upon IoT Crusaders to present their presentations. Please.
Hello.
Okay, IoT Crusaders, your time starts now.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Nafisa, welcoming everyone to our team IoT Crusaders. This is our presentation outline. So, in this present world, environment challenges are getting higher attention. But to address these challenges, we don't have no proper consensus to address. The hypothesis of environmental Kuznets curve suggests that pollution increases at the initial stage of development and decreases when per capita income rises beyond a threshold limit. It is because high economic development is associated with high resources to invest. But critics argue that this is not always true because in higher economic growth, it is associated with greater consumption of natural resources. So it negatively impacts the environment. Now talking about externalities. Externalities is an important issue because internalizing externalities can ensure that cost and benefits of economic activities are properly aligned. So, for this purpose, government can impose tax or regulations on activities that generate negative externalities. And for positive externalities, government can provide subsidies. Talking about taxes, now let's talk about Pigovian tax. It is a tax that is imposed on those activities which generate negative externalities. And this tax works to reduce negative externalities by making the activities or product more expensive. So it is not preferred sometimes. Also, administrative costs are also associated. Then, cap and trade. Government caps the total amount of emissions allowed per year and then auctions of pollution permits for which companies can bid. It has many advantages, but it is complex to design and sometimes manipulated by large companies. So, debate between these two are ongoing, but for providing a proper framework to address these challenges, we need sufficient researches. Next will be carried out by Janvi. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll be discussing about some of the personal opinions we have come up with. First is subsidies. It involves the government providing incentives to firms or individuals that requires positive externalities. Some of the benefits of subsidies are subsidies can significantly promote enterprises' green investment. Then the promotion effect of the environmental subsidies is more significant for the heavy polluting industries. And the last one is also the same, is more significant for regions with higher local government environmental preferences than the lower ones. Next is genuine progress indicator, in short GPI. It's an measure for economic growth. It's a little bit different than the GDP. So let's see some of the benefits we get from the GPI. GPI considers the social and environmental factors such as income distribution, natural resource depletion, cost of population, and crime. GPI also focuses on the people and their well-beings to ensure the sustainable economic growth. Then GDP mainly focuses the consumption. So it can lead to overconsumption or environmental degradation, but on the other hand, GPI can shift the focus from consumption to the well-being of the local people. Lastly, GPI encourages sustainable development by promoting the use of natural resources. Then we have got the Coase theorem. Basically, this theorem suggests that the population can be reduced efficiently by bargaining among parties. According to the Coase theorem, the polluters and the people who are being polluted can minimize solutions to minimize the environmental costs. So some of the benefits we will get is it will give us efficient outcomes, it will give us flexible solutions, and the private bargaining will result in cost savings. To sum up some drawbacks, we can see that it allows transaction costs to be low, and also it gives equal powers to all parties. Lastly, the one party or the both parties can have incomplete information about the cost and benefits of their actions. Now I'd like to call my next fellow teammate, Sama. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Now we are going to talk about our execution structure. We have divided into two sectors, for the developing countries and for the developed countries. For the developing countries, the first measure could be setting some performance standards which will specify the targets for emissions and energy efficiency. Then we can provide public subsidies to the organizations and institutions using renewable energy sources and using greener technology. Then we can implement some zoning regulations and laws which will limit the land uses and promote sustainable municipal activities and programs. Public education is also crucial at this stage to make the public aware of the sustainable uses, and then research and development should ensue newer technologies and policies. Example of a developing country which is doing really good is Brazil, who is reducing their carbon emissions and capturing the carbon market while using renewable power sources. For the developed countries, they should consider focusing on GPI rather than GDP, and the technology, capacity building, and finance they have, they should enhance their help to the countries who need most. So they can help the developing countries too. Lastly, they should rationalize some pollutant-specific research and development so that more pollutant-specific technologies are developed in the future. Sweden is the most green country according to many surveys. It has the highest renewable energy usage and the lowest carbon emissions. They have also major fundings in R&D. This concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for your time and opportunity. This is the references we used. Thank you.
Thank you for your nice presentation. Suppose there is a particular example I am saying, right? So in the upstream, there is a factory or a industry, right? And in the downstream, you have a resort. The river is passing through the resort as well as the industry. And there is also a certain community live there, a village or a community. So both of the resort and the community suffer from negative externality, right? So how will you check this negative externality? What is your opinion for both of cases?
We have talked about zonal laws and regulations. We need to implement these regulations so that the community which are impacted the most, like if the resort and the community which are residential need the area more or use the area more, then the industry should be relocated to a place where the impact of the industry will not hamper the community. Or if the community is in the industrial region, then they should be relocated to a place where the government can subsidize their losses and manage that they are not getting any bad hampers or negative impacts.
Okay, so you opine for removing the industry, right? But if I say that it is quite expensive or there is an industrial region nearby that area, so what would be the, I mean, you can say many kind of solution, but you have also need to check which one is economically feasible. And also for a resort owner, that is a single stakeholder, right? And the community, there are multiple stakeholders, so the solution would not be the same. So do you have any idea about both of the cases?
In some cases where it will be more complex to relocate them, then we can ensure that the government subsidizes greener technologies so that the industry which is already emitting many bad pollutants can reduce their pollutant level to an extent that doesn't hamper the community. They have to go for a greener technology.
Okay. Firstly, thank you for your nice presentation and on-time presentation. But I have two queries. First one is, you have shown the responsibility that should come from the government. I mean, the measures that should come from the government. But from the point of view of the pollutant that is being generated by the industries or by the sectors, what would be their responsibility and how they can mitigate it, number one. And fundamental, another question you shown in your slide, that technological sector, there could be something related to technology they can generate to reduce the pollutant level. So, some examples.
Some examples can be that we are considering that the EKC curve shows us that the industrial revolution is going to a point where countries are imposing laws and regulations that forces the companies to become more green. They have no other option. They might have to increase their production cost, but they have no other option but to stay within their cap limit. So they have to opt for greener technologies themselves. We are proposing that the subsidies given in addition to that, not just the subsidies to increase the greener technology. The industry themselves need to invest more on that.
This is from the point of view of government point of view. But from the industry point of view, what measures other than the technology? Technologically, what technology? Green technology, but how? What is the green technology? Some examples, one or two.
By using renewable energy sources like
Okay, one,
for not
one, another one.
by recycling their resources efficiently, like the water or the limited resources that they use, they should recycle it within their region.
Okay, thank you from my side.
Thank you. Thank you for your nice presentation. I have a small question. How technology transfer from the developed country can aid for the developing country to mitigate the environmental pollutions?
The developed countries are at a stage where they have executed those technologies and received positive outcomes. So they can, they have already patented their technologies, but the developing countries can use those technologies themselves and do the same with their country or their industries.
So actually, 100% technology transfer is not possible. Actually, 100% technology transfer is not possible. So is there any regulations how our industry can use the technology developed from the outside country? Is there any rules or regulations under which?
It is very low.
Sorry. My question is there any rules or regulation in our industry so that they can buy some technology from the developed country?
The solution we proposed of the international agreement is actually based on the Paris Agreement itself. It's an agreement which is done in Europe that has rationalized that the technology used in the developed countries can be used by the developing countries by this method. They have gone through that agreement. We just referred to that.
Okay.
So it is usable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Team IoT Crusaders for their outstanding performance. Now it's turn for Team Sage. I will call upon Team Sage for delivering his speech. Okay, Team Sage, your time starts now.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Yambino from Team Sage. So before going deep into the case, we first need to understand the environmental Kuznets curve. This is a theory derived from the Kuznets Nobel Prize winner, Mr. Kuznets, who invented the Kuznets curve, which actually showcases the relationship between the per capita income and the environmental degradation. According to this environmental Kuznets curve, the environmental decay increases with the country's developing economy. It shows that in the initial stages of a country's development, pollution is thought to increase. But after arriving to a certain point, it is expected that after reaching to a turning point, the pollution level is expected to decrease. So there is a debate here, right? So right now the debate is whether the economic growth is good or bad for the environment. Now many researchers have identified the problem and have discussed this further. And researchers have found that the pollution actually depends on three factors: the scale of production, the technology, and the industry composition. So looking into the situational analysis and this graph from the case provided, it actually shows that when the government actually focuses on the technological side and composition and technique overall, it actually reduces the emissions by 76.5%. So it actually concludes that technological improvement will be the main agent behind the emissions reductions. So in going to the solution, we have to keep in mind that we have to focus on the technological innovation. So I do have some personal opinions. That is that the government should focus on some recommended policies, and when these policies are generated, it has to be ensured that they focus on the growth of the economies, but while observing the environmental aspects as well. They have to internalize the externalities and also maximize the overall welfare for everyone. In recommending these policies, we have to keep in mind that the industrialization is imminent. So whatever we plan, we have to keep focus on the industrialization, because it is going to grow further and further and not going to decrease anytime sooner. Also, environmental concerns will be a key factor in everyone's mind, and also technology will be the key. So our focus will be on whether we can improvise on the technology innovation. So in the solution part, I suggest that the government should introduce and incentivize greenhouse gas storage industry and implement green taxes. So this is a very innovative approach where will be companies and startups who actually focuses on storing greenhouse gases such as the carbon dioxide. There are already many startups such as Carfix, Northern Lights, Econ Project, etc. in different countries who actually collects the greenhouse gases from the external environment and stores them into salts or rock powders and so on to reduce the emission. And also the government should implement the green taxes where the industries should put taxes on pollution, energy, greenhouse gas emissions, fuel consumption, waste production and disposal. So the big idea, the policy for the governments should be that the government needs to accurately produce an emissions trading scheme based on cap and trade system. So these are the industries. The industries will be allowed to emit some form of gas, but there should be a cap. When the emitted gas is inside the cap, the industries will not have to put any taxes or any extra monetary benefits as well. But when the industries crosses this cap, they have to pay for the emission, and they can also, and also the industries can exchange the carbon business among themselves. So when a industry, for example, is low in emission, they can sell their surplus amount of carbon to the industries who are actually lagging behind. So the execution plan is quite simple. First of all, the government needs to identify the trace impact and the factors that dominate the downturn in emissions. First of all, we have to determine the cap on emissions on different industries, because the cap will be dependent on the industries. We have to set prices on the greenhouse gas emissions and the units to be sold and set GHG trackers. We can partner up with companies like PwC, who actually has a product called GHG trackers. There will be allocation methodology based on which the companies can trade the carbon business among themselves. Then the government should incentivize the growth of GHG storage industry, because it is a rising industry right now in countries like Switzerland, Norway, and etc., where companies like Carfix are improving a lot. And also the government needs to establish monitoring and reporting requirements and compliance mechanisms. And finally, everything should be monitored and evaluated of the scheme, and the market should be established. When these overall policies are going to be established, we can actually focus on improving two things. First of all, we can ensure that our economy is growing. There is no lackings in industrialization. And also, we are also focusing on the environmental aspects as well. So we're actually focusing on the two sides with this solution. These are the appendix. I have studied from different research papers, YouTube videos, and also these strategies are currently in the line in countries like Norway, Switzerland, etc. The startups are growing. Also, different studies from China and Malaysia also suggest that the cap and trade system is going to be a key for the developing countries. So it also includes Bangladesh as well. So cap and trade system is going to be much more focused on the developing countries, where the greenhouse gas emission industry will be more focused on the developed industries such as US, UK, and so on. So this was from all my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your nice presentation and on-time presentation, obviously. But I have two queries. firstly, you are suggesting some framework or, I mean, something generalized way that you can, have a package like those who are above the cap level, they can have some subsidies or, some remedies. But what about the wastage or the overproduction that is being generated by the factories?
Yes, sir.
In that case, let me finish. In that case, is there any way, is there any way to remedy the wastage that is being generated?
Yes, sir.
Or the resources that is being misutilized, or the resources that has been contributed to the scraps or other issues?
Thank you, sir. So, sir, the general idea is that when an industry is emitting more pollution than the cap, they have to provide a subsidy, they have to provide a fee actually to the government. This is called the green tax. The government further will use this green tax to invest in waste management projects, such as there will be a mill which will be let's say that polluting a river. So they're actually crossing the cap. So they're actually going to provide a fee to the government. There are also two suggestions as well. The government actually allows the mill to actually invest themselves in a waste management project so that the emissions can be reduced in the rivers, also the air as well. But if not, they're actually going to pay a fine, which the government will use to invest in the waste management projects. So this is the general idea.
Do you have any idea? There is one more thing on top of all this report and all your discussion, that is the carbon offset. Carbon offset.
Yes, sir.
So it could be a better idea also. So what do you think?
Yes, sir. Carbon offset is actually a great idea. I actually thought about it a lot. But when I talked about that, the different industries can actually trade among themselves the carbon business. There's a growing business. So actually, I have thought that this solution actually covers that carbon offset as well. So, for example, there's two companies. The companies are allowed to emit 10 tons of carbon dioxide. For example, this is the cap. If they go beyond that, they have to pay a fine. So if a company actually produces 8 tons of carbon, so they actually have 2 tons of carbon in hand, which are their surplus, they can actually sell this to a company which are actually producing 12 tons of carbons. So there is actually a balance that is going on. The government actually can focus on maintaining this balance, maintaining the control of overall the carbon dioxide emissions and other greenhouse gases as well.
And one more thing, that those people who are not beneficiary, one is the loser.
The externalities, yes.
How you will compensate those people?
So, sir, I'm actually relying on the government here as well, because I believe that the government has to play the vital role here. So this is where the fine comes from. The government collects the fine, and the government has to promise us that they are actually going to invest in the environmental projects which are going to benefit the externalities. Like this is also a part of the solution. Like collect the taxes, collect the fees, and invest on the externalities who are actually not getting any benefits at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No more question.
Thank you, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Team Sage, for his wonderful performance. Now let's welcome Team Mobashir for next presentation, please.
Hello, am I audible?
Okay, Team Mubashir, your time starts now.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I want all of you to take a look at these two bottles. At first I want to showcase these two bottles and want you to think about how these two bottles, despite having the same quantity, cost differently. One cost only 25 taka, whereas the other cost 50 taka. Now we'll talk about it more in the upcoming slides. Now, at first, I want to showcase the environmental Kuznets curves or the EKC curve. The EKC curve actually depicts that when a company starts producing, they start to make a lot of pollution. But after reaching a certain peak, they then start to invest on the technology so that they can decrease these pollutions. But the problem with that is that there is no exact model to forecast that when this peak will arise, and this actually varies from sector to sector. So there is no actual way to foresee the peak. Now then comes the EKC based decomposition of US SO2 emissions. What actually this slide showcases that when we actually consider the composition, the scale and the technological benefits, we can actually get a lower amount of emissions. Now let's discuss about the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Let's say I want to buy a pen and I have a budget of 10 taka, but the pen costs actually only 5 taka. So there is a 5 taka of consumer surplus. And from the producer's perspective, he only had to incur a cost of only 3 taka. So he had a 2 taka of surplus. This actually is going to be used in our next slide. Now coming to the most important part of our presentation, that is the externalities. Externality is actually a cost that can be both positive or negative, and it will only be implemented on the third party who is not involved in the consuming or the production phases. Now think about the airplane. They incur millions of dollars worth of pollutions. But do the prices of those airplane tickets actually focus on that? They does not. Now if we look at the positive and the negative externality, here we will have to subsidize the positive externalities, and we will have to put some kind of tax on the negative externalities so that we can internalize those, and so that we can ensure that there is a socially optimum efficient outcome. Now let's think about what I was saying. Now why one of these 250 ml bottles cost 25 taka, whereas the other cost 50 taka? The second one actually the production of a can is a procedure where there is so much pollution involved, and because of that there is a negative social externality cost. Now to correct this, the economists of the US or the European Union are pleading on to ensure that the Pigouvian tax or the corrective tax can be imposed. They also talked about the cap and trade, but there are some problems and there are some pros as well. We'll discuss this about now. Now think about the Pigouvian tax. This actually fixes the prices with additional components for reflecting the damages, but the problem is that companies will push the cost to customers and people will fly less. That is what the economists want. But does it actually happen? No. If we want to buy a 50 taka worth of can, we actually buy it. We don't think about how it will implement the environment. Now for my personal opinion, the cap and trade has some serious problems. This actually benefits the technologically unsophisticated once more, because after a certain threshold, it is so much costlier to improve on the pollution form, and this actually pushes implications of new technologies, which is good, but not all the companies can afford it. This can also help for the economic involvement, but not all the industries are suited for it, because in some cases, other companies from outside